The lights above Seoul burned bright that night. Not the warm lights that humans once made, but the cold blue glow from the alien stations floating in the sky. Dae-hyun stood at his workstation in the underground maintenance tunnels and pretended to check the water pipes. His hands moved over the controls, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. 30 years, that was how long the Council had ruled Earth. 30 years since the alien ships came down from the stars and told humanity that they were now subjects of the Galactic Sovereignty Council. 30 years since humans lost their freedom. Above him, in the grand orbital station that hung over the city like a metal moon, the Council was celebrating. Dae-hyun could see the broadcasts on the small screen mounted to the tunnel wall. High Arbiter Velkath stood before a crowd of alien dignitaries, his 6 arms spread wide in triumph. 30 years of peace, Velkath announced, his translator device making his clicking speech into human words. 30 years since we brought order to this chaotic species. The humans have learned their place. They work quietly, they obey. They have accepted our guidance. Dae-hyun allowed himself a small smile. The aliens thought humans had given up. They thought the silence meant surrender. They were wrong. His communicator buzzed against his wrist. A simple code meaningless to anyone watching. But Dae-hyun knew what it meant. 3 short pulses. The message was clear. The ships are ready. He finished his inspection and logged out of the system. As he walked through the tunnels toward the surface, he passed dozens of other workers. Some he knew, some he didn't, but each one gave him a tiny nod or a brief glance. They were all part of it. They all knew. On the surface, the city looked normal. Humans walked the streets, going to their jobs in the factories and farms that fed the Council's empire. Alien guards stood at intersections watching with bored expressions. Nothing seemed wrong. Nothing seemed different, but it was different. Very different. Across the city, in a research facility built into the side of a mountain, Hana sat at her workstation and stared at the data flowing across her screen. To anyone watching, she was just another human scientist, working on the navigation calculations that the Council needed for their supply routes. But Hana was doing something else. Her fingers flew over the controls, copying files and encrypting them with codes that would take the Council's computers 1,000 years to break. She was stealing everything. Every star chart, every safe route through dangerous space, every piece of information that humanity would need. Dr. Hana, a voice said behind her. She froze. Slowly, she turned to see one of the Council's overseers standing in the doorway. The creature looked like a combination of an insect and a bird, with compound eyes that saw in spectrums humans couldn't imagine. Yes, Overseer, Hana asked, keeping her voice steady. Your efficiency has increased by 12% this month, the Overseer said. The Council is pleased. Continue your excellent work. Thank you, Overseer, Hana replied, bowing her head in the way the Council expected. The Overseer left. Hana waited until she was sure he was gone, then let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Her hands were shaking. She looked back at her screen. The last file had finished copying. She had everything they needed. In the countryside, far from the cities and the Council's watchful eyes, Tae-min walked through his fields. The crops grew tall and green under the Earth's sun. To the alien inspectors who came by once a month, Tae-min was just a farmer, a simple man who grew food for the Council's markets. They didn't see the tunnels beneath the fields. They didn't see the hidden entrances or the supply caches stored underground. They didn't see the transport vehicles disguised as farm equipment. They didn't see any of it. How many tonight? Asked Kyung-soo, another farmer who wasn't really a farmer at all. 47, Tae-min replied quietly. 3 families with children. The elderly couple from the next province. The rest are volunteers. The trucks are ready, Kyung-soo confirmed. They'll look like we're just moving grain to the processing center. But they wouldn't be moving grain. They would be moving people. People who would disappear into the network of safe houses and hidden facilities that stretched across the globe. People who would eventually board ships that the Council didn't know existed. In the ruins of Busan, in a basement that the Council had marked as structurally unsafe and forgotten about, Yuna typed commands into a computer system that shouldn't have existed. She was young, barely 20, but her skills were legendary among the resistance. Her screen showed the Council's surveillance network, thousands of cameras, millions of sensors, all of them reporting that everything was normal, all of them showing exactly what the Council expected to see. none of them showing the truth. Yuna had spent 5 years learning the Council's systems. She knew every backdoor, every weakness, every blind spot, and she had used that knowledge to build something beautiful and terrible, a complete fake reality that the Council believed was real. The population numbers. Fake. The Council thought there were still 8 billion humans on Earth. The real number was much lower now. The activity reports? Fake. Every day, the Council's computers showed humans going to work, eating, sleeping, living their lives. But half of those humans were just digital ghosts, programs running in the background creating false data. How long do we have? A voice asked. Yuna turned to see Mirai, one of the historians documenting everything humanity wanted to save. 3 months, Yuna replied. Maybe less. I can keep the illusion going that long, but after that the Council will start noticing the discrepancies. Then we need to accelerate the timeline, Mirai said. Yuna nodded. She typed a new message into the network, encoding it in a way that would reach every resistance cell on the planet. Accelerate evacuation. 3 months to completion. That night, as Daehyun returned to his small apartment, he found a message waiting for him. It was from his sister, who supposedly lived on the other side of the city. The message was simple. I'm safe. I love you. See you among the stars. His sister was already gone. She had boarded one of the ships 2 weeks ago. She was out there now, beyond the moon, beyond Mars, heading toward the secret construction sites in the asteroid belt where the colony ships waited. Daehyun looked out his window at the city. How many of these lights were real? How many were just illusions? How many of his neighbors had already left, replaced by holograms and automated systems? He thought about the Council's celebration earlier that night. High Arbiter Velkath, so proud and confident. The Council believed they had won. They believed humanity had accepted defeat. They believed they were untouchable. Daehyun smiled in the darkness of his apartment. Let them believe it. Let them celebrate. Let them think they had won. The truth was simple. Humanity had never stopped fighting. They had just learned to fight quietly. In the orbital station above Seoul, Velkath stood at the window of his private chambers and looked down at Earth. The planet glowed with lights. Cities hummed with activity. Everything was in order. Everything was perfect. We have tamed them, he said to his assistant. The humans are ours, his assistant agreed. They all agreed. The Council was certain. They had no idea that the lights below them were mostly empty cities. They had no idea that the activity they saw was fake. They had no idea that humanity was leaving, one person at a time, as quietly as shadows slipping away in the night. The people went quietly, and the Council believed they were untouchable. Both groups were about to learn a very important lesson. The asteroid was just a rock. That was what the Council's records said. Just another piece of space debris in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. Too small to mine, too insignificant to bother with. The Council had marked it as worthless 30 years ago, and never looked at it again. Inside that rock, Jiwoo stood on the bridge of a ship that should not exist. The ship was enormous, nearly 2 kilometers long, shaped like a smooth cylinder with engines at one end and living spaces throughout its length. It could hold 50,000 people. It had farms and factories and schools. It had everything humanity would need to start over, and the Council had no idea it was here. Captain, said one of the engineers, the final tests are complete. All systems are functioning perfectly. We can launch whenever you give the order. Jiwoo nodded slowly. She had been an aerospace engineer before the Council came. She had designed passenger shuttles and cargo vessels. Now she commanded a ship that her younger self would have thought was impossible. How many ships are ready? She asked. Across the entire network? 247 colony ships, another 100 support vessels. Enough to evacuate 7 billion people. 7 billion. Out of the 8 billion the Council thought still lived on Earth. Humanity had been leaving for 5 years, and the aliens had never noticed. Jiwoo walked to the window and looked out at space. Other asteroids floated nearby. 30 of them held ships like hers, all of them waiting, all of them ready. Have the agricultural specialist finished loading the seed banks? She asked. Yes, Captain. Every ship has complete genetic samples. Seeds from every crop, DNA from every animal we could save. We won't lose anything. Jiwoo thought about that. Humanity was leaving Earth behind, but they were taking Earth with them. Every plant, every animal, every piece of knowledge and culture, it would all survive. Back on Earth, in a hospital in what used to be Singapore, Sujin checked her medical supplies one more time. The hospital looked busy. Doctors and nurses moved through the halls. Patients filled the beds, but it was all fake. Most of the patients were holograms. Most of the staff were sophisticated robots. The real doctors and nurses had left months ago. Sujin was one of the last. She had volunteered to stay until the final evacuations were complete. Someone had to make sure the sick and elderly got out safely. "Dr. Sujin," said one of her assistants, "we have transport for the last group. 73 patients, 28 are critical condition. Can they survive the journey to the ships?" Sujin asked. "We've prepared medical pods. They'll be kept in suspended animation until they reach the colony vessels. They'll never know they left Earth." Sujin felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For 5 years, this had been her nightmare, that someone would be left behind because they were too sick to travel. But humanity had solved that problem too. They had stolen Council medical technology and improved it. Now even the weakest could make the journey. "Schedule their transport," she ordered, "and make sure the hologram patients are programmed to fill their beds. The Council's inspectors will be here next week." In a massive underground facility beneath the Gobi Desert, Kyung-ho stood before a wall of containers that stretched as far as he could see. Each container held seeds. Not just a few seeds, but millions. Every food crop that humanity had ever grown. Every plant that had ever fed people. "We're loading the last shipment now," said his assistant Mireille, who had come to document this part of the evacuation. 700 containers. 20 ships will carry them to the new colonies." "What about the genetic samples?" Kyung-ho asked, "all preserved. We have DNA from every domesticated animal. Cattle, chickens, pigs, sheep, even pets, dogs and cats and birds. Future generations will have everything they need." Kyung-ho walked along the containers, his hand trailing along the cold metal. Each one represented months of work, years of planning. They had built this facility in secret, right under the Council's nose, disguised as a mineral processing plant. "The Council thinks we're mining rare earth elements," he said with a bitter laugh. "They have no idea we're saving our entire agricultural heritage." Mirai looked at him thoughtfully. She carried a small device that recorded everything. Not just facts and numbers, but stories. Humanity's stories. "Why did you volunteer for this?" she asked. "You could have been on one of the first ships. Your expertise was valuable enough." Kyung-ho was quiet for a moment. "Because someone had to make sure the children would have apples. And rice and all the other things that make Earth special. I couldn't leave until I knew we had saved it all." Across the world in 100 different locations, the same scene was playing out. Humans loading supplies, checking systems, preparing for the final departure, all of it hidden from the Council's eyes. In Tokyo, a museum was being emptied. Not the public museum that tourists visited, but a secret one beneath it. Every piece of human art and culture that could be saved was being packed and shipped to the colony vessels. Paintings, sculptures, books, music, movies, everything. In New York, the ruins of the old financial district hid a massive data center. Inside, computers were copying every piece of human knowledge. Every scientific paper, every mathematical proof, every medical discovery, all of it being backed up and stored for the journey. In Cairo, beneath the desert sand, engineers were dismantling the equipment used to build the colony ships. They couldn't leave any evidence behind. When the Council finally realized what had happened, they would find nothing but empty facilities. Taemin drove his truck through the countryside, heading toward the nearest evacuation point. The back of his truck was supposed to be filled with grain. Instead, it held 40 people. They sat quietly in the darkness, trusting him to get them to safety. Families with children, elderly couples, young people heading off to start new lives among the stars. "How much longer?" a young boy asked his mother. "Soon," she whispered. "Just a little longer." Taemin's heart ached for them. They were leaving Earth, the only home humanity had ever known. They would see new skies and strange suns. They would walk on alien soil and breathe air that had never known Earth's wind. But they would be free. At the coast, hidden in what looked like ordinary shipping containers, Taemin transferred his passengers to a submarine. Yes, a submarine. The Council never watched the oceans carefully. They thought humans didn't have the technology for deep-sea travel anymore. They were wrong about so many things. The submarine would take these people to an underwater facility, where a shuttle waited to carry them to orbit. From there, they would transfer to one of the colony ships. In a week, they would be far beyond the Council's reach. Safe journey, Taemin told them as they boarded. Will you come with us? The mother asked. Taemin shook his head. Not yet. There are still more people to move. But I'll come. Eventually, he watched the submarine disappear beneath the waves. Then he climbed back into his truck and headed back to his farm. Or what the Council thought was his farm. In Busan, Yuna was getting worried. Her screen showed a problem. One of the Council's junior analysts had noticed something strange. The power consumption in the European sector was lower than expected. It was a tiny discrepancy, just a few percentage points, but it was enough to make someone curious. Yuna's fingers flew over her keyboard. She rerouted some systems, created false readings, made it look like there was a malfunction in the sensors. The analyst would investigate the sensors and find nothing wrong. By the time they realized the readings were accurate, it would be too late, but it was a warning. The illusion was starting to crack. They didn't have much time left. She sent a message through the network. Detection risk increasing. Recommend acceleration of final phase. The message went out to every resistance cell, to every evacuation point, to every ship waiting in the asteroid belt. Time was running out. Back on the colony ship, Jiwoo received Yuna's warning. She called a meeting of the other ship captains. Their faces appeared on her screen, transmitted through quantum communication channels that the Council couldn't intercept. We need to be ready to launch early, she told them. The timeline has moved up. We might have to go in weeks instead of months. What about the people still on Earth? One captain asked. We'll get them out, Jiwoo promised. All of them. But we need to prepare for a fast evacuation. No delays, no mistakes, the captains nodded. They understood. This was what they had trained for, what humanity had prepared for over 30 long years. On Earth, Dae-hyun received new orders. He was to join the next evacuation group. His work in the tunnels was done. Someone else would take over his position. He looked around his small apartment one last time. He had lived here for 20 years. This was his home. But Earth wasn't home anymore. Not really. Not when the Council ruled it. He packed a small bag. One change of clothes, a photo of his family, a book his grandmother had given him before she died. That was all he could take. That was all anyone could take. Everything else would have to be left behind. But as he walked out the door, Dae-hyun didn't feel sad. He felt hope. Humanity was leaving, yes, but they were leaving together. They were leaving free. The Council still celebrated in their orbital stations. They still believed they had won. They still thought humanity had been conquered. They had no idea that the quiet had never been surrender. It had been preparation. Dongjun stood in the empty auditorium and looked at the faces of the 2,000 people who had volunteered to stay behind. They knew what they were choosing. They knew they might never see the stars. Thank you, he said simply. His voice echoed in the large space. Thank you for giving humanity a chance. The volunteers didn't speak. They just nodded. They understood. Dongjun had been a teacher before the Council came. He had taught history to children who still believed in freedom. Now he was teaching a different kind of lesson. He was teaching sacrifice. Our job is simple, he continued. We keep the illusion alive. We make the Council believe that everything is normal. We give the colony ships time to get far enough away that they can never be caught. How long? Someone asked from the crowd. 6 months, Dongjun replied. Maybe a year. We need to maintain the appearance of a full population for as long as possible. He pulled up a hologram, and it showed Earth from orbit. Cities glowed with light. Roads bustled with traffic. Everything looked normal. This is what the Council sees, Dongjun explained. But most of those lights are automated. Most of that traffic is drones. Most of the people they see are holograms. We've already evacuated 80% of humanity. The Council hasn't noticed. A woman near the front raised her hand. And when they do notice? Dongjun was quiet for a moment. Then we activate the final protocols. We shut down the illusion, and we make sure they can never follow our people into the stars. Everyone understood what that meant. They wouldn't survive the final protocols, but humanity would. In Seoul, Yoonji put on the neural interface helmet and activated the synthetic body. Her consciousness flowed into the artificial form, and suddenly she was standing on a street corner instead of lying in a hidden facility. The synthetic body looked exactly like a human. It moved like a human. To anyone watching, it was just another person going about their day. But it wasn't real. It was just a machine controlled by Yoonji's mind. She walked down the street, passing alien guards who didn't give her a second glance. She bought food from a market stall run by a robot programmed to act like a merchant. She sat in a park full of holographic children playing. It was all fake. All of it. But the council believed it was real. Yoonji controlled 15 different synthetic bodies. Other operators controlled even more. Together, they created the appearance of a city with millions of people. A city that was actually almost empty. Status check. Her supervisor's voice came through her neural link. All bodies functioning normally. Yoonji reported. Council patrol passed by my unit 3 at 1400 hours. No signs of suspicion. Good, keep it up. We need 2 more months, 2 more months. Then most of the operators would evacuate too. Only a handful would remain for the final phase. Yoonji returned her synthetic body to its charging station and removed the helmet. She was back in her own body, in a small room with a dozen other operators doing the same work. Do you ever think about it? Asked Jae-sung, another operator. About what we're missing? The colony ships, the new worlds. Every day, Yoonji admitted. But someone has to do this. Someone has to give them time. Across the city, Sang-woo was doing different but equally important work. He stood in a control room filled with screens and switches and blinking lights. Each screen showed a different part of the city. Each switch controlled a different illusion. Holographic projections of people walking streets. Sound systems playing the noise of crowds and traffic. Heat signatures created by warming elements that made it look like buildings were occupied. All of it controlled from this room. Sector 7 needs adjustment, said one of his technicians. The population density looks too low. Sang-woo tapped commands into his console and more holographic people appeared on the streets of Sector 7. Better? Perfect. The council's sensors won't detect any difference. This was the magic trick that made everything possible. The council relied on their sensors and computers to monitor Earth. They didn't actually send many patrols into human areas. They thought their technology was enough. They were wrong. Sang-woo had spent years learning how those sensors worked. He knew exactly what readings to fake. He knew exactly how to make empty cities look full. We have a problem, one of his technicians suddenly announced. Council inspector heading toward Sector 12. Sang-woo pulled up the Sector 12 feeds. The sector was mostly empty, kept alive by holograms and automated systems. Route the inspector away. Create a traffic incident on the main road. On it. A few moments later, holographic vehicles collided on the main road leading to Sector 12. The council inspector's vehicle was redirected to a different route. Crisis averted. Good work, Sang-woo said. But his hands were shaking. These close calls were happening more often. The council was starting to pay more attention. In the countryside, Tae-min was preparing to leave. His rotation was over. Someone else would take over his farm and continue the work of moving evacuees through the rural networks. He walked through his fields one last time. The crops weren't real. They were sophisticated projections designed to look like growing plants from above. The council's orbital sensors showed healthy farms. The reality was bare earth and hidden bunkers. You ready? Asked Kyung-soo, who would be staying behind to manage the next phase. As ready as I'll ever be, Tae-min replied. You sure about this? You can still come with me. Kyung-soo shook his head. Someone has to stay. Might as well be me. I don't have kids waiting for me up there. Tae-min gripped his friend's shoulder. Thank you. Just name a mountain after me on whatever planet you settle on, Kyung-soo said with a smile. Something tall and impressive. That night, Tae-min boarded a shuttle hidden in a grain silo. The shuttle would take him to orbit, then to one of the colony ships. In a week, he would see his daughter and grandchildren who had evacuated 6 months earlier. He looked back at Earth as the shuttle rose. The planet looked peaceful from up here, blue and green and beautiful, but it wasn't home anymore. In Busan, Yuna was working on her masterpiece. The virus she had been writing for 5 years was almost complete. It would be her final gift to humanity. The virus was designed to do one thing: destroy the Council's ability to track or follow the colony ships. When it activated, it would erase all navigation data from Council computers. It would corrupt their star charts. It would scramble their communication networks. It would buy humanity the time they needed to disappear into the vastness of space. Will it work? Asked Mireille, who was still documenting everything. It'll work, Yuna said confidently. I've tested it on isolated systems. When I activate it, the council will be blind for at least 6 months, maybe longer. And what about you? Will you evacuate before you activate it? Yuna was quiet for a moment. I need to be here when it activates. I need to make sure it works. If something goes wrong, I need to be able to fix it. Mirai understood what that meant. Yuna was volunteering to stay behind, to be one of the last to leave, or perhaps to not leave at all. Then I'll stay with you, Mirai said. Someone should document the final days. Someone should record what we did here. The two women looked at each other and smiled. They were both scared, but they were also proud. Across Earth, the pattern repeated. Volunteers staying behind. Operators maintaining illusions. Engineers preparing for the final shutdown. All of them buying time with their sacrifice. On the colony ship, Jiwoo received daily reports. The evacuation was 90% complete. 7 billion people had already left Earth. Only 1 billion remained, and most of those were volunteers. We need to set a final departure date, her first officer said. We can't wait forever. I know, Jiwoo replied. But we don't leave anyone behind. Everyone who wants to come comes. The volunteers made their choice, Jiwoo interrupted. We honor that choice by making sure their sacrifice means something. We wait until the last possible moment. That night, as Daehyun settled into his quarters on one of the colony ships, he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the people still on Earth, his friends, his colleagues, Dongjun and Yoonji and Sangwoo and all the others who chose to stay. He had asked to stay too, but they had told him no. He was needed on the colony. His skills were too valuable, so here he was, safe among the stars while others faced danger below. His communicator buzzed. A message from Dongjun sent through the quantum network. Don't feel guilty, old friend. You're doing the hard part. You have to build a new world. We just have to turn off the lights when we leave. See you in the next life. Daehyun smiled through his tears. Trust Dongjun to make a joke even now. On Earth, in 100 hidden facilities, the volunteers worked through the night, operating synthetic bodies, managing holograms, maintaining the greatest deception in human history. The council still patrolled the streets above. They still monitored their sensors. They still believed everything was normal. High Arbiter Velkath looked at the reports from Earth and nodded with satisfaction. Production quotas were being met. Population levels were stable. The humans were behaving exactly as expected. They're so predictable, he told his staff. So simple. They work, they eat, they sleep. They've forgotten they were ever free. His staff agreed. Everything was going according to plan. Earth was a model colony. They had no idea that below their feet humanity was vanishing like smoke and wind. Quietly, carefully. The junior analyst's name was Tekvar, and he had a reputation for being too careful, too precise. His supervisors often told him to worry less and trust the systems more. But Tekvar couldn't ignore the small inconsistencies he kept finding in the Earth monitoring data. Power consumption was down. Just a little. But down water usage was irregular. Not by much, but irregular communication traffic patterns had changed. Slightly, almost imperceptibly. I want to perform a physical inspection, he told his supervisor. Again? The supervisor made an annoyed clicking sound. You performed 3 inspections last month. Everything was normal. This time I want to inspect residential areas, not just the industrial sectors. The supervisor waved multiple arms in frustration. Fine, do your inspection. But stop wasting time on human territories. They're not going anywhere. Tekvar took a shuttle down to Mumbai. He had chosen the city randomly without warning anyone. He wanted to see the unscripted reality. The streets looked busy as his vehicle descended. People walked on sidewalks. Vehicles moved through traffic. Everything appeared normal from above. But when Tekvar landed and stepped out of his shuttle, something felt wrong. The air was too quiet. Even with people visible on the streets, there wasn't enough noise. Cities were supposed to be loud. This one felt muted. He walked toward a residential building. 3 humans were standing near the entrance, talking to each other. Tekvar approached them, but they didn't react. They just kept talking, their conversation a loop of generic phrases. He waved a hand in front of one human's face. Nothing. No reaction. Tekvar reached out and touched the human's shoulder. His hand passed right through a hologram. His blood went cold. He ran to the next group of humans, holograms, all of them. He ran through the street, touching everything he could. The people, the vehicles, even some of the buildings. Fake. All fake. Tekvar ran into an apartment building. The doors opened automatically. He climbed the stairs to the third floor and kicked open an apartment door. Empty. Completely empty. Not just empty of people, but empty of everything. No furniture. No signs that anyone had ever lived there. He ran to the next apartment. Empty. The next one. Empty. The entire building was empty. Tekvar activated his communicator with shaking hands. "This is Junior Analyst Tekvar. I need immediate backup. I need full spectrum scans of Mumbai now. What's the problem?" His supervisor asked. "The city is empty." "The entire city is empty." "It's all holograms." There was a long silence on the other end. "Then say that again?" "The city is empty," Tekvar repeated. "I don't think anyone lives here anymore." Within an hour, council ships swarmed over Mumbai. Their scanners revealed the truth. A city designed for 20 million people had less than 50,000 actual human residents. The rest were projections, sophisticated holograms, fake people living fake lives. Within 6 hours, the council had scanned every major city on Earth. The results were impossible to believe. Earth's population wasn't 8 billion. It was less than 500 million, and dropping. High Arbiter Velkath stared at the reports in his command center, unable to process what he was seeing. His 6 arms hung limply at his sides. "Where did they go?" he whispered. "Where are 7 billion humans?" "We're trying to determine that," one of his officers reported. "But our systems have been compromised. Someone has been feeding us false data for years, maybe decades." "Find them!" Velkath ordered, his voice rising to a roar. "Find them now!" In Seoul, Dongjun received the alert. "They know. Activate final protocols." All across Earth, the volunteers began their work. Unji shut down the synthetic bodies. Sangwoo initiated the shutdown sequences for the holographic systems. In 100 hidden facilities, operators began erasing data and destroying equipment. In Busan, Yuna's hands flew over her keyboard. The virus was ready. It had been ready for months. All it needed was her command. "Are you sure?" Mirai asked, her recording device capturing everything. "I'm sure," Yuna said. "This is what we trained for." She pressed the enter key. The virus spread through the council's network like wildfire. It was beautiful in a way. Yuna watched on her screens as system after system went dark. Navigation databases corrupted. Star charts scrambled. Communication protocols overwritten. The council's technology was turning against them. In orbit on the colony ship, Jiwoo received the signal she had been waiting for. "They know. They're coming. All ships, initiate departure sequence." Alarms blared through the massive vessel. Throughout the ship, 50,000 people moved to their acceleration couches. Daehyun strapped himself in and felt the ship begin to vibrate. This was it. They were leaving. "Status report," Jiwoo commanded from the bridge, all ships responding. 247 colony vessels are powering up. Support ships are in position. All civilians are secured. Navigation? Jiwoo asked. "We have our routes. Thanks to the data we stole, we can navigate through regions the Council considers too dangerous. They won't follow us there. Then let's go. All ships full power. Engage FTL drives on my mark." In orbit around Earth, the Council's detection system suddenly registered hundreds of massive energy signatures. Ships. Enormous ships that had been hiding in the asteroid belt, around the moons of Jupiter, in the rings of Saturn. "Where did those come from?" an officer shouted. "Unknown," came the response. "They're not in our database. Those ships shouldn't exist." Velkath watched in horror as the ships began to move. They weren't military vessels, he realized. They were colony ships. Humanity was leaving. "Stop them," he ordered. "All ships intercept and disable. Do not let them escape." Council warships scrambled to respond. Dozens of them broke orbit and accelerated toward the human fleet. But they were too late. The human ships had a head start and they were moving fast. "Sir, the humans are heading for the Veiled Nebula," a navigator reported. "That's an uncharted hazard zone. No ship can navigate through there safely." "They know something we don't," Velkath realized. "They stole our navigation data. They know the safe paths." On the colony ship, Hana sat at the navigation station. All those years of stealing data, all those secret files she had copied, it was all paying off now. She had the complete map of the Veiled Nebula, including the narrow safe channels that the Council had discovered but never publicized. "Adjusting course," she announced. threading needle between plasma storms. The Council ships can't follow us here without the same data. Several Council ships tried anyway. They pushed into the nebula behind the human vessels, but without the navigation data, they quickly found themselves in danger. Plasma storms battered their shields. Radiation levels spiked. One ship suffered engine failure and had to turn back. "They're not following," the tactical officer reported. "They're letting us go." "They don't have a choice," Jiwoo said. "We're taking paths they can't follow. And thanks to Yuna's virus, they can't even track where we're going." Back on Earth, the Council forces finally reached the hidden facilities. They found them empty. Every computer had been wiped. Every piece of equipment had been destroyed. All that remained were empty rooms and destroyed hardware. In Busan, they found Yuna's facility. The computers were still running, displaying a simple message on every screen: "Goodbye." Yuna and Mirai had evacuated hours ago on one of the last shuttles. They were in orbit now, watching Earth shrink in the distance. "Did you ever think we'd actually do it?" Mirai asked. "No," Yuna admitted. "But we did. We actually did." Dongjun stood in the main control room for Earth's remaining systems. Around him, the last volunteers worked at their stations. They had maybe an hour before the Council forces reached this location. "Status?" he asked. "All evacuation shuttles have launched. All personnel are away. We're the only ones left." "Then it's time," Dongjun said. "Activate the final sequence." The volunteers nodded. They had known this moment was coming. They activated the EMP devices hidden throughout Earth's cities. Massive electromagnetic pulses erupted across the planet, destroying what remained of the Council's monitoring systems. When the pulses faded, Earth went dark. All the fake lights, all the holographic people, all the illusions that had kept the Council blind. Everything shut down at once. From orbit, Velkath watched his prize planet go black. It looked dead, empty. "Send ground teams," he ordered. "Find any humans still there. Find out where the others went." But his officers were already shaking their heads. "Our systems are compromised, High Arbiter. The virus has destroyed our navigation databases. We can't track them. We don't know which direction they went. We don't know which star systems they're heading for." "Then guess. Search everywhere. There are 400 billion stars in this galaxy, High Arbiter. They could be heading for any of them. We'd never find them." Velkath collapsed into his command chair. They had lost. 7 billion humans had slipped through their fingers. Dongjun and the remaining volunteers took the final shuttle from Earth. They were the last humans to leave. As their shuttle climbed toward orbit, Dongjun looked back at the planet. It looked different now. Quieter, emptier, but still beautiful. "Will we ever come back?" one of the volunteers asked. "Someday," Dongjun said. "When we're strong enough. When we're free enough. Someday we'll come home." The shuttle rendezvoused with one of the colony ships, the last one still waiting in the solar system. As soon as Dongjun and his team were aboard. 5 years had passed since the exodus. Daehyun stood on the balcony of his apartment in New Seoul and watched the sunrise. But this wasn't Earth's sun. This was a yellow dwarf star in a system the Council had never explored, lighting a world humanity now called home. The city below him bustled with activity. Real activity this time, not holograms or tricks. 2 million people lived here now, building lives, raising children, creating a new civilization. "Dad, are you coming?" his daughter called from inside. "The Council meeting starts in an hour." "Coming," Daehyun replied. He was a Council member now, helping to govern the colony. It was strange, after so many years of hiding and running, to actually have a voice in his own government. He took one last look at the city. New Seoul was just one of 3 major colonies humanity had established. There was also Hope Station, orbiting a gas giant where Hana led the scientific research. And there was Greenworld, where Timon had helped establish agricultural settlements that fed all 3 colonies. 7 billion humans scattered across 3 star systems, all of them free. The Council chamber was a simple building, nothing like the grand structures the Council had built on Earth. But it was theirs. Built by human hands, governed by human laws. "First order of business," said the Council chairman, a woman named Bo-Ra who had been a resistance organizer on Earth. "We've received another transmission, another species asking for help." Daehyun sat forward. This was the 4th such transmission in the past year. Word was spreading across the galaxy. Other species were learning what humanity had done. Who is it this time? Another council member asked. They call themselves the Kaltin, Bora replied. They've been under council rule for 50 years. They want to know how we escaped. They want to try the same thing. The chamber fell silent. This was the question they had been debating for months. Did humanity help other species escape? Or did they stay hidden, safe in their remote systems? We can't stay hidden forever, Hana said from her seat. She had traveled from Hope Station specifically for this meeting. Eventually the council will find us. We need allies. But if we help others escape, we risk exposing ourselves, countered another member. Daehyun stood. 30 years ago, we made a choice. We chose freedom over safety. We chose hope over surrender. Are we really going to deny others that same choice? The chamber erupted in debate. Some agreed with Daehyun. Others argued for caution. It went on for hours. Finally, Bora called for a vote. All in favor of making contact with the Kaltin and offering assistance? Daehyun raised his hand. So did Hana. So did more than half the council. The motion passes, Bora announced. We will help them. Back in council space, things were very different. The grand orbital station over Earth sat empty now. Most of the council's resources had been pulled back to their core worlds. Without human labor and ingenuity, their economy had collapsed. Velkath no longer held his position as High Arbiter. He had been removed from power within a year of humanity's escape. The other council members had blamed him for the disaster. Now he lived in exile on a remote colony world, forgotten and powerless. He spent his days reviewing the records of humanity's escape, trying to understand how he had missed it. The answer was always the same. He had underestimated them. He had believed they were weak. He had believed they were conquered. He had believed he was untouchable. The council itself was fracturing. The 7 species that had ruled the galaxy for centuries were now fighting among themselves. Some blamed others for the failure. Some wanted to search for humanity. Some wanted to forget the entire episode. It's over, one council member had declared in their last meeting. Let the humans go. We have bigger problems now. Those bigger problems were the other species. The Kaltin weren't the only ones attempting escape. A species called the Rill had already succeeded, disappearing from their homeworld overnight using tactics clearly learned from studying humanity's exodus. The council was discovering a hard truth. Once people learned that escape was possible, they would try it. The illusion of control was shattered. On Hope Station, Hana stood in her laboratory and studied the latest data. Her team had been working on something extraordinary. Improvements to humanity's FTL drive technology. They were faster now, more efficient. They could travel farther than ever before. How much farther can we go? Her assistant Jae Young asked. With these improvements, we could reach the other side of the galaxy in a few months, Hana replied. We're not trapped in our little corner anymore. The galaxy is open to us, she thought about that. 5 years ago they had been refugees running for their lives. Now they were explorers, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Have you heard the rumors? Jae Young asked quietly. Which rumors? That the council is collapsing. That species are leaving left and right. That the empire is falling apart. Hana had heard. Everyone had heard. The question was, what did humanity do about it? On Greenworld, Taemin walked through fields of grain that stretched to the horizon. The crops here grew differently than on Earth, taller and with a slightly blue tint. But they were still crops. Still food, still life. His grandchildren ran through the fields, playing and laughing. They had been born here on this new world. They would never see Earth, but that was okay. They were free. They were happy. Grandfather, his granddaughter called out. Is it true? Are we going back to Earth? Not to stay, Taemin replied. But someday, yes. We'll visit. We'll see the old world again. What's it like? Taemin thought about that question. How did you describe Earth to children who had never seen it? It's blue and green and beautiful. It has oceans and mountains and forests, and someday, when we're strong enough, it will be ours again. In New Seoul, Daehyun received an encrypted message from the Kaltin. They had successfully evacuated their first 1,000,000 people using tactics humanity had shared with them. The council hadn't even noticed yet. He smiled. The pattern was repeating. Species learning from each other, freedom spreading like wildfire. Daehyun called a meeting of the council. We need to make a decision. Do we just help individual species escape? Or do we do something bigger? What do you mean? Bora asked. I mean, do we start building a real alliance? Not just refugees running and hiding, but a coalition. A new power in the galaxy, built on freedom instead of control. The room was quiet as everyone considered this. The Council will see us as a threat, someone pointed out. The Council already sees us as a threat, Hana countered. The question is, do we hide from them forever? Or do we stand up and offer an alternative? We should put it to a vote, Bora suggested. This affects everyone. Let all the colonists decide. Over the next month, every human in all 3 colonies voted. The question was simple. Should humanity help build a new galactic alliance based on freedom and cooperation? The result was overwhelming. 90% voted yes, so humanity began reaching out, not just to the Calton, but to dozens of other species, offering help, sharing knowledge, building connections. A year later, the first meeting of what would become the Free Worlds Alliance took place on Hope Station. Representatives from 15 different species attended. They came in secret, hidden from the Council's eyes. Daehyun gave the opening speech. We are not here to build an empire. We're not here to rule anyone. We're here to prove that free people working together are stronger than any tyranny. The representatives applauded. They had all suffered under Council rule. They had all dreamed of freedom. Now together, they would build something new. Back in Council space on a forgotten colony world, Belkath heard about the Free Worlds Alliance. He heard that humanity wasn't hiding anymore. They were building, growing, thriving. He had thought them weak. He had thought them conquered. He had thought himself untouchable. He had been wrong about everything. 10 years after the Exodus, the Free Worlds Alliance had grown to include 40 species. Their combined population was nearly 100 billion. They had established trade routes, defense agreements, and cultural exchanges. The Council still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self. Many of its members had left, tired of the constant conflict and economic problems. The empire that had once ruled half the galaxy now controlled barely a quarter of it. Some Council members had even approached the Alliance, asking to join as equals rather than rulers. It was a remarkable change. On Earth, something unexpected happened. A small group of humans returned, not to live under Council rule, but to reclaim their homeworld. They landed in what used to be Seoul and began rebuilding. The Council, weakened and desperate, didn't stop them. They couldn't stop them. They had learned their lesson. Daehyun was part of that first group to return. He stood in the ruins of his old apartment building and looked up at the sky. No more Council stations, no more alien guards, just Earth's sky, finally free. We did it, Hana said, standing beside him. We actually did it. We did, Daehyun agreed. We went quietly. We left without a fight, and we won. Across the galaxy on Hope Station, a monument was built. It listed the names of all the volunteers who had stayed behind during the evacuation, Dongjun, Unji, Sangwoo, hundreds of others who had sacrificed so that humanity could escape. The inscription at the base read, "They kept the lights on while we learned to shine," in the new Seoul Memorial Garden.